right, hello everyone, and welcome to our Canva and HubSpot webinar. So welcome to what I think might be a HubSpot and Canva first here in APAC. While our brands have certainly had a partnership for the last couple of years, I don't think we've done something like this. So I'm absolutely pumped for today's conversation. Today's conversation is all about visual communications, of course. And so we are going to be discussing, firstly, what we mean by this and what makes us excited about visual comms at HubSpot and Canva. Importantly, we're going to be covering the trends that we think should make you excited about visual comms going forward. And of course, sharing some of our tips and tricks to help level up your content and touching on some of the tools today that can help you do just that. It is now time for me to introduce our wonderful guests for today's session. These lovely folks whose faces you're about to see appear on camera are going to be helping me add color to today's topic and conversation. So I am going to ask them to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their roles, what they do. And Shirley, I hope you don't mind, but we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kat. So hello, everyone. I'm Shirley, and I'm the Global Head of Social at Canva. Our team looks after all our social media, as you can imagine, but also our engagement with our community, as well as some influencer marketing as well. We operate over 40 channels across 17 markets. I think we're about 13 different languages, and our audiences cover consumer, education, and B2B as well. And we produce all our content that works through the entire funnel.
Awesome. Welcome. Greg.
Hi everyone, I'm Greg. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Generative AI at Canva, which is the best job ever. I've spent the last decade working for global B2B and B2C tech companies, and I've been bouncing between the product development teams and marketing with a really big focus on helping orgs scale. In my role at Canva, I oversee the creation of all of the marketing and the marketing strategy for all of our Gen AI products, and I help the product team to guide the development of the tools by advocating for the user at every turn.
Sounds like a terrible role. As a great role, I'm going to expect a lot of questions coming your way today on all things AI, Greg. Luke.
Hello, my friends. My name is Luke Summerfield, Director of Product Strategy at HubSpot. I've been at HubSpot for about 10 years. Tour of duty all around HubSpot, from the agency partner program to the marketing team to launching some certifications at our academy to developer land. And most recently, as the product strategy team, we partner with product line GMs to explore where customers are going, where the market's going, how do we solve business challenges, and basically figure out what do we want to build next. So obviously AI is a big part of that. My most recent project was leading and launching the Content Hub launch, which launched in April. We'll talk a little bit about it, but it's great to be here with everyone.
Thank you for joining us as well. You heard it here, guys. If you have questions, if you're a HubSpot customer and you want to influence what we build next, Luke is your person to talk to. And that sort of reminds me that I have not formally introduced myself. So I'm Kat Warboys. I look after our APAC marketing team here at HubSpot. Similar to Luke, I'm a little bit of an old timer at HubSpot, coming up to 9 years, not too soon. So yeah, very, very delighted to be your host today. Right, let's keep the engagement going. As I said, those questions as we go, put them in the Q&A box and continue to share where you're coming from today in the chat. But we are now going to get into the good stuff. And by good stuff, I think we should probably start at the very beginning, Shirley. What is it we really mean when we say visual communications, right? Are we not just talking about content marketing? And why does this matter?
Yeah, so I guess to me, visual communication is using images, graphics, other visual elements essentially to communicate different information, ideas, and messages, I guess, in ways that makes it engaging and easy for people to understand. It's also about increasing productivity, helping people elevate creativity, and improving, I guess, brand awareness, employee culture, as well as communication and different experiences. At Canva, we recently got 4,000 global business leaders around the world, and we wanted to really unpack and understand how they're embracing visual communication tools in practices such as their workplaces. And what we did find is that it's definitely a growing area. It's also helped a lot of organizations create brand trust and also see longer term benefits in things such as shortening the sales cycle. And what we might share today is actually some of the stats in the research. What we found is that 89% believed visual communications carries more authority compared to other methods. 88% said that visual communication tools have accelerated their sales cycle purely because it's much more digestible and thus led to more responsive and engaged prospects. And one area that is supercharging all of this is actually Gen AI, which has opened up endless opportunities and possibilities for people to be creating high impact content and be able to do that at scale as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a great report. I'm sure we're going to send that round as part of the resources after this so people can have a full read of it, but excited for you to be sharing some of the insights with us today. I really want to emphasize a couple of things you said about visual comms, and it's that sort of idea of the visual elements that we're using to communicate, ideas, information, and messages, right? And I think it's important to emphasize that because when we view that through that lens, we're not just talking about content marketing and marketing teams here, right? Any team, in fact, you could argue every team can benefit from being able to convey, ideas and messaging in a more engaging way, whether that's, an internal presentation, if you're trying to pitch for more resources to, the sales team or your end customer, whoever that customer might be. And I think on the topic of sales, I really love that you touched on the sales team. So fun fact, when I joined HubSpot all those 8 years ago, I actually joined in a sales enablement team. So I'm a big fan of how we empower sales with great content to sort of really help them hit their message home. And I'm sure many of us, if we think about the majority of sales outreach we receive, there's a lot of room for improvement here. And so I'm excited to later with you, Shirley, get into a little bit more about the sales team and how they can use visual comms. Because typically, it's an email, sometimes feels like an essay, there's just copy, and it absolutely fails to engage me. I don't know about you, but most 98% of my sales outreach is unsuccessful for this very reason, I feel. For our salespeople on the call, definitely listen up. We've got some tips coming down the track for you. I think the other point to this, though, is that, this discussion feels very timely for our go-to-market teams like marketing, sales, and even customer success. From our research at HubSpot, we discovered that just 40% of those go-to-market teams here in Australia, at least, feel that they can effectively connect with their prospects and customers. So getting cut through, reaching our buyers is definitely harder than ever. And then if you flip that kind of coin over and you think about this problem from the customer's perspective, we also learned that 90% of those B2B brands we surveyed said that they'd had really bad brand experiences quite recently. And when we dug into kind of the reasons as to why, pains me to say this as a marketer, but the number one reason for these bad experiences was this lack of, relevant and unpersonalized marketing materials. It felt like they were being spammed essentially, which is a very painful thing as a marketer to admit. But what I think this kind of says to me is that businesses now need to really rebuild or refresh their go-to-market strategies if they're going to be able to continue to effectively connect with customers on that deeper level. And I think visual communications is one area where, that can really help us bridge this gap that we have between our strategies, our content, and our buyers. So we've got a few trends that I think will help our listeners and audience today come on this journey with us and hopefully agree with us by the end. And the first trend is a little bit of a simple statement almost, but one I don't think we can underestimate. And that is the fact that people just value really good content, right? People want to be educated, amused, inspired, entertained, all of these things. I think what's difficult sometimes for is for a business to care about this. Why should I care about, entertaining my audience? And from my experience, it's because when we engage our audience meaningfully and deeply, we start to build that brand trust and credibility that is so important if we're going to, start to see traction down through to, sales. One of the best examples I think we're seeing this in is social media, which over the last decade has just evolved dramatically, right? It's changed the way people are discovering brands, the way that they're buying from brands. Instead of searching for the solutions that you need, solutions are now coming at you in your social media feed. And so, thinking specifically within social media, Shirley, as the global head of social media at Canva, I would love to learn a little bit about how you and your team are really thinking about visual comms within your own strategy in social.
Yeah, I think as most people can relate, social media is a very visual heavy communication platform. And in addition to building brand, creating communities, driving impact through the funnel, it can actually help people with making sales decisions. And so visual communication has a really unique strength when it comes to this in helping prospects and customers better retain information through to promoting a strong brand image and even fostering trust and credibility amongst their buyers. So We've seen a lot of success in building B2B content strategies, particularly for our enterprise product that we launched earlier this year. There's, things from case study content through to industry thought leadership. And so what we did find in learnings and insights is that it's really about understanding how do you use the social platforms to their strengths so that we could make the content as digestible as possible. And some tips to kind of take away in terms of our learnings is to understand, I guess, what your customers' pain points are and how your product solves their problem in a really unique way, because day by day we are being compared in the feed and with sometimes our competitors. And backing the content as well with data results that you have found, and that really kind of bolster the credibility of what you're saying, and that creates more stickiness as well. There's also crafting the content to be as short and as engaging as possible, whether it's a webinar, a key statistic, a carousel of results, or a really short video in its simplest form, as most buyers and decision makers in B2B, generally speaking, are very time poor, as are consumers as well. And so the classic saying of social moves at crazy speed is really accurate, as does our attention span. And lastly, using the power of paid media, the ability to target very personalized messaging is really powerful. It's the whole one-to-one situation where by creating this visual content, it helps also zero in on prospects at every level, whether it's at a sector level or a size level in terms of company size, through to seniority as well.
Yeah, I really like those tips, especially around, the formats, short form on social media, and how we try and engage B2B buyers. And I think this is a particularly exciting space for B2B brands. In a key driver of this is really cultural shifts we're seeing, generational shifts. Millennials are now increasingly the decision makers, and they have Gen Z reports. And with Gen Z, that personal and professional life is a lot more blended than ever, right? Especially on social media. And so this idea of B2B brands should only be on LinkedIn and, it's not a space for them on TikTok or Instagram is a very dated one. I also don't think it's, just about the channels that we're showing up in. It's our approach to content. So something that's worked well for us at HubSpot, in addition to what you've touched on, Shirley, what we really think of more of that traditional product B2B, focusing on product features, benefits. We've also been experimenting with content that helps us connect more with our audiences, sort of like emotional needs and interest, right? With content that's just kind of fun. So we've been blending in narratives aligned with pop culture references or social media trends like Taylor Swift, Bridgerton, key sporting events, right? And we're seeing more B2B brands do this with this kind of like emergence of what we're calling the corpsumer. And so this balanced sort of approach of that visually educational content with more, human and relatable in B2B is really working for us. Over the past 7 months, we've seen an 84% year-on-year growth in our number at HubSpot and our followers of LinkedIn, but also record high in social engagement rates. And this averages anywhere between 5 to 13%, depending which of the social media channels we're actually looking at. I think the other area, and I think this is something Canva does as well, is influencers, right? And I think this is a top tip to consider. Yes, even if you're a B2B brand, we know there's about 50 million people currently who identify as an influencer, and B2B is a really growing segment of this. And I don't think it's a coincidence, right, that some of the fastest growing channels we're seeing, like social, are favoring creators over brands. And these influencers are masters of visual communication. And so I kind of want to stress here that I don't think there isn't a place for brands on social media, not at all, but I think we can learn a lot from what influencers are doing really well in this space of visual comms. What we found through some of our experiments is that, posts that feel too produced or polished start to get misunderstood as ads, and they really start to feel corporate-y, and they lack that authenticity. And again, that's something that I think the influencers are doing really, really well, is authenticity. So we're seeing far better results if we get an employee just to do like a 30-second video on their own camera and uploading it that way than we are with sort of heavily produced content. So that's a lot on social media. And we did say that there were some tips here for our sales teams today. So kind of want to move into that space now. And curious, how you think, Shirley, brands can really leverage some of these visual communications to engage prospects specifically, and really start to see tangible results for sales teams, anything from, speeding up or shortening that sales cycle, for instance.
Sure. I think as we spoke earlier, visual communication is naturally about more digestible content so that people can retain information better. Ultimately, I think when you look at that through a sales lens, it can help prospects stay engaged through the whole sales process. So when we did our research, as referenced earlier, we also saw that 90% of sales leaders agreed that visual communication accelerated their sales cycle. And I think a big part of this is about giving the departments the ability to self-serve visual content that is on brand. For example, creating brand templates for the sales teams to use for RFPs or pitch decks that they're working on so that they can easily switch in a logo or an image to make it more personalized to a prospect. Using templates can also empower the teams to create content at speed. As I kind of can't stress enough that the whole time poor situation. And so it also doesn't bottleneck the marketing department as well. I think there's much more efficiencies we can see across the board there from a wall-to-wall perspective. And when it comes to, I guess, creating lead nurturing campaigns as well to outreach to cold prospects altogether, I think at an industry level, typically the 3 rounds of emails generate a high response rate. And so to kind of expand on this approach with visual communication, you could set up a sequence of 3 touch points for sales. So this could include using an image that links to an explainer video or a customer case study, or even some key stats from research. And all of these things, I guess, combined can really make, I guess, a productive and efficient process for the sales cycle, which, as you can imagine, naturally does end up shortening it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I love the suggestions around marketing, creating those templates for sales to use, to ensure that we're seeing also just the brand consistency flow through, right? If we're doing all this at the marketing level, how is that being represented by our sales team in the form of pitch decks, case studies, as you say? And I think you make such a good point on we don't want to create sort of bottlenecks by, one-on-one or particularly one-to-one requests of the marketing team, but more how can we start to build templates to empower the sales team? I think it's such a good point. What I love about the use case for sales is, if you have a product or a service that's maybe, the first of its category or a new category, so people aren't as aware of what it is or how it benefits them, or maybe you just work in a really complex industry where there's a lot of nuances, visual comms just absolutely helps simplify messages in some of those ways that you've already suggested, like infographics, for example. I actually had a very real world example of this last week, and I couldn't believe it because I knew this webinar was coming up. So I'll share it. But for those that may not have heard on the call today of Motion AI, this is kind of a Google Calendar meets Asana. So it's project management built into your calendar. And the big benefit of the product that they sort of advertise is, they've got these AI capabilities that make it feel like you have your own assistant managing your calendar for you. Now, conceptually, I absolutely understood this. What I was struggling to understand is how it actually worked. How did it show up in my calendar? What was it going to do to some of my processes that I already had in place? How was it going to improve it? And I had been retargeted. I'd received sales emails, very long emails, just sort of written copy, and I just wasn't getting it. And then finally, I was sent a graphic. And this graphic was a storyboard kind of image with stick figures, really well done. And within 30 seconds of this graphic and this storyboarding, I understood exactly how this product was going to work in my calendar. And needless to say, by the end of that day, I became a customer of Motion.ai. And this is not a big plug for Motion AI. This is a very real world example of how I think, struggling to understand how something would work, even though people have tried, explaining it to you in written format, sort of the power of a visual communication to really simplify that idea and make it digestible. Something else that I'll share that works really well at HubSpot is video as part of our sales outreach sequence. So something our reps will do that's been really successful in the past is they'll record a video of, say, the prospect's website. So immediately as a prospect, I'm like, that's my website that this person is recording a video of. And our reps will actually start to give, tips or advice for where they think the prospect could maybe stand to, have some room for improvement on, say, how they're capturing leads, for example. And so I think this kind of personalization combined with a visual element really starts to get cut through and help establish, trust and credibility with a colder lead. I think all of this is really kind of bringing us to our second trend today, which is around personalization. So that desire for more personalization continues to be the number one driver for great customer experiences. People want to feel like that content they receive from a brand has been made just for them, which of course can be tricky to do. But it's not just our customers. We spoke to Australian brands in particular, and 78% of them agreed that streamlined, personalized customer experiences are key to their business growth going forward. So Shirley, if we can take, some of the principles of visual communication and create these more tailored experiences for our audience, what are some of the things we can think about?
Yeah, so I guess with today's average person being exposed to so much content, I think it's easily in the tens of thousands, if not more. Personalization is really needed to get cut through. And this is especially prevalent when you're thinking about high impact visual communication content, such as social media assets. I think personalization as a social media experience is so powerful in the sense that you can capture and retain attention, which means your prospects can know of your brand more easily. They understand your product better. They understand how it's differentiated and the benefits, I guess, for that matter as well. So when you're creating personalized social media content, there is an opportunity to think about it from a one-to-one perspective through to a one-to-many, depending on the design, whether it's organic, whether it's paid. There is a lot of ways that you could approach it. So for example, we recently launched Work Kits, which is part of our enterprise solution, and it talks to professionals in marketing, sales, HR, and creative departments. So promoting this on social, we used templates that were readily available, that we tailored them to the needs of each department based on pain points through to things that we knew were common, I guess, nuances within their areas. And it was as simple as tweaking the copy in the template and keeping everything else still locked from a brand perspective. And it was just a matter of a few clicks. So when it's highly relevant and it's feeling like it's tailored to your day-to-day, it can really be as powerful as staying there on your screen and reading what the post has to say. And this is serving it to a targeted viewer in essence, so that they can instantly relate, they can stop the scroll, and they're more likely to act upon it as well.
Yeah, stop the scroll. I feel like that's a hashtag if it's not already. Really, really great tips. I think, personalization really comes into its power, because we're talking a lot about visual elements here, and sometimes we do just want to send an email that is, copy and that's appropriate for the engagement. I think this is where personalization can even make, an email really stand out. In a recent experiment, our automation team started to, play around with basically a large language model to provide more personalized pathways to take new leads that we were acquiring to start to build that trust. And so at HubSpot, when we acquire a new lead, we find that typically it's way too early to start a sales conversation or a product conversation. So our goal at this stage is really to add as much value as we can. And one of those ways that works really well for sort of new leads is actually directing them to the HubSpot Academy. The HubSpot Academy is full of short courses, longer form courses, certifications on a variety of topics for our audience. So really spanning for the professionals of marketing, sales, and customer success. And so what we did with this sort of first conversion automation for new leads was we were able with AI to use sort of the business URL, look at the job role, the business industry, and then create an email where the entire content was tailored to that person for every person that came through that automation. So for example, if you are a cafe owner, the email is going to be personalized with cafe or coffee bean puns even. And it's also going to look at what you've been engaging with. So if you've been on our blog looking at social media templates or strategies, then the CTA in your email is going to tell you to take the social media course because it looks like that's what you're interested in. And, and that's out of hundreds of other courses from our academy that it could recommend you. So this level of personalization that we're using in email is really having huge impacts. We saw in our click-through rate, improved about by 56%. But importantly, that conversion rates, the number of people coming into the automation and then going to the academy improved by about 82%, which is huge. So when we take these visual comms and we're layering in deep layers of personalization, whether that's one-to-few, one-to-one, one-to-many, we start to see real momentum. And once again, I think this is bringing us to our third trend. So if you notice, these trends are definitely building on each other quite nicely. And that's around Gen AI, right? And how it's improving, the quality of visual communications. Interestingly, 70% of local businesses are agreeing that the introduction of AI has caused their business to reinvent. So if you are not thinking about this at the moment, listen up. We're going to talk through this at the moment. And I'm actually going to ask Greg to help me with this one. You know, as the senior product marketing manager for Canva, specifically the Magic Studio, which is full of AI goodness. Can you tell us a little bit about why, I guess, you think Gen AI is improving or how it's improving the quality of visual communications?
Absolutely. I've found a lot of the headlines and the general conversation around AI and Gen AI is focused on flashy image and video generation. But I feel like that's a little bit disconnected from the real world. In reality, as we can see from the visual communication report, 91% of APAC organizations are already using AI to improve their visual communications. And that's through two very distinctive ways. Firstly, speed. AI has helped us to automate and streamline a number of manual and often tedious processes, which is incredibly useful if you're a marketer who has to act like a jack of all trades with a never-ending to-do list. Now we can transform designs into multiple formats for different mediums with just a click. You can easily rewrite content for different audiences. You can remove backgrounds from images in a flash and even generate eye-catching visuals with a prompt. So instead of having to spend all your time caught in the tactical, like many of us do, AI is starting to free up time so we can focus more on driving business outcomes, which personally, I really enjoy. The second way that visual communication has been enhanced by AI is through quality output. 90% of marketers in that visual comms report say that AI has helped them to improve the quality of their communications, which is so good if you're trying to build a brand or you're focused on growth. So thanks to these tools, you can easily polish your draft text, turning it into on-brand comms. You can improve the quality of your designs by changing colors to align with your brand, and even tidy up messy designs with a click. And I'll show you how to do that later in a demo. And all of this is kind of just the beginning as well. Like AI hasn't really been around in a consumer-facing way for that long. And as it becomes more and more integrated into workflows and becomes more accessible, we're going to see more benefits emerge as marketers. And that makes me very, very excited for the future. But it also makes me wish I had these tools far earlier in my career.
I agree with you. When I think about starting out, my gosh, what I would have given to have some of these tools to speed up my life. I think it's a very exciting time for marketers. You know, we get caught up so much in reformatting content for different channels. There's so many channels to create some of this content for, as well as, you know, tracking and measuring. And now I feel like we're able to actually just do more and do more great marketing, which is super exciting. So agree with you on that one. Luke, I have a similar question for you as HubSpot's Director of Product Strategy. You know, where are you seeing our businesses, our customers using generative AI?
Well, one of the things that excites me most about generative AI, which is really piggybacking off of a lot of what Greg said, is just the ability for small teams to leverage it to speed up the time that it takes them to create great quality content and then reinvest that time into other places. And so I heard a little shout out to Joe McCord. I see he said he's using some AI tools in HubSpot to write blogs in 15 minutes as a starting point, which I love. And I think that's
awesome.
it really just goes to show like the power that you can have in getting from a 0 to 1 draft on a lot of content. And one of those things that I've noticed, again, this is also thinking back to my marketing days, is that one of the things that AI will allow marketers to do or empower them to do is to really tailor that content for each distribution channel. As Greg was talking about, I mean, whether you're talking about email or Facebook or X or TikTok, WhatsApp, SMS, there are so many different channels that we have to be cognizant of. And the media and the message that you use in each one of those will be unique to the channel. And so the challenge is to tailor for every channel is super time consuming. And so inevitably what a lot of marketers do, especially when they have a lot on their plate, they basically copy and paste. It's like, I have one message and I'm going to try to copy and paste that across email, social, TikTok, X. And the problem with that is it really doesn't land as well for your audience if it's not really tailored to the format that you're trying to communicate in. And so the beauty of Gen AI is it can help speed all of that up. And for example, we have an APAC content creator, Jamie Lynn. She took our remix tool, which we're going to demo in just a little bit, and she used it to spin up content for all of her different channels and saved at least 75% of her time in repurposing and distributing that content from one channel to another. And I don't know about you, I would love to have 75% of my time back to work on other things. So I thought that was great. And it's not just her, it's one of the things too is that AI, not only is it helping repurpose, but it's also helping produce better quality content, as Joe mentioned in the chat with his blogs. We did a survey with our marketers, 3,100 marketers who are using HubSpot AI in March. And 91% of them cited that using HubSpot AI to create their content performed better than when they did not use HubSpot AI. And again, I think that just shows that having that time savings, they can reinvest it in other marketing areas. The last one I'm going to mention really briefly, just for time, is it also democratizes our ability as marketers to lean into video. We talked about already how important video is. In HubSpot's State of Marketing 2024 report, the #1 ROI format was short form videos. And that's really not going to change anytime soon as the rise of Gen Z as the rise of Gen Zs get into the workplace, as alphas start to get purchasing power. That's just sort of the way that those generations prefer to consume content. But again, video is super time consuming, and a lot of times it requires skill sets that we may not have in-house, whether that's script writing, whether that's editing, production, learning the tools. And so between AI and just video, easy video editing apps, just the advancements that we've had in those, it's really allowed us as marketers to take advantage of video as a new format, whether we're talking about demo videos, whether we're talking about sales enablement videos, hype videos, explainer videos. There's so many different ways that we can leverage videos. And I just love that it's becoming more and more accessible for us to leverage that and not have to spend loads of time or loads of money to be able to do it.
Totally. I think it's such a game changer for all businesses, but in some of the points you've made, smaller business, right? I remember going to meetups, a few years ago, and typically the #1 question I would get is, we're a small marketing team. We can't be on all these channels, but we know they're all important. We want more visibility, we want more reach. And it was tough. And that was a real, I think, challenge for smaller businesses to think about their time, their bandwidth, and, really focusing on 1 or 2 core channels. That is not the case anymore. There's so much reach and distribution that we can tap into, given that all of this is saving us so much time, which is just fantastic, really. I think great points. I think to summarize, if you're not on the Gen AI bandwagon, it's helping create content that performs better than content that isn't leveraging Gen AI, and it's making the entire process faster for our content creators, which is a wonderful thing. Going a little bit more into the tools then, Shirley, what are you, seeing as some of the key priorities when businesses are evaluating, tools for visual communication? We know it's becoming a problem. We saw a stat from the research that 73% of businesses are spending more in visual comms compared to last year. So, pretty solid investment that we're seeing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with so many tools out there at the moment, it can be very overwhelming and quite costly. And based on our research, when leaders are actually evaluating tools, we did find that there are 3 key things that they're looking for. So essentially, they're trying to look for tools that can do an all-in-one functionality, ideally, the ability to keep their content on brand, and lastly, the capability for their teams to collaborate in real time.
Yeah, 100% seeing the same thing on our side at HubSpot on that all-in-one functionality. As a customer platform, we see how transformational it is for teams who can track the full impact of the content and campaigns that they're generating back to sales growth and even customer retention. And so our customers who've been able to show that full funnel impact typically, on average, seem to have an easier time requesting more budget for their content and campaigns from finance, which can only be a good thing. So definitely agree with you on that one. Greg, you have teased us a little bit with some of the things that you said you're going to show us. So I'm hoping I'm going to switch it over to you now and ask you to tell us a little bit what you've got in store for us on the product side today.
Cool. I've just pulled together a little bit of a demo. This is all happening in real time, and I'm really keen to show the speed of which you can improve the quality of your work using AI.
Amazing. Let's take a look.
Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of Canva. Canva is an end-to-end visual communication and collaboration platform. It empowers users around the world to design presentations, whiteboards, documents, social media assets, as well as video and websites. It's very comprehensive, but one of my favorite things about Canva is how it's integrated AI within all of the workflows. So today I thought we could show you some of the cool new tools such as our video editing and our image generation tools, but I thought it would actually be more beneficial to everyone on the call if I show you how the Canva team uses AI in everyday workflows. So today I'm going to give you a very quick run through on how we can improve the quality of this presentation by using some very easy to access AI tools. So to begin with, I have created a brand kit, and a brand kit is a single repository that anyone in your team can access with all the on-brand assets you can use. So for us, for the sake of this presentation, we've created a brand kit for the Co-Media company, and we have logos, some colors, some fonts, as well as a brand voice. In other circumstances, I would have added photos, graphics, and icons, but today we're just really focusing on this. So to begin with, we've got this very sparse front page or title page of the presentation, and I really want to bring this on brand. So I can do that very easily by adding primary colors from our brand kit. And within a single click, we can now make sure or ensure that this is on brand. And we can also apply it to all pages, but for this presentation, I'm only going to do the front page to make it more punchy. Now we can see here that although the colors are great, the actual contrast has made me very aware that the alignment's wrong. The text is not going over the face of the lady. We've got misaligned text here, and as we click through the pages, we can see that a lot of the images are out of whack. The text is misaligned, and some of the pages just look a bit boring. So I really want to fix that quickly. So to do that, I'm going to go to Design, past Templates, and into Layouts to access a inspirational AI tool. This tool in seconds generates a bunch of different layouts for your design to help you instantly improve it. And I quite like this top one, or we could scroll down and maybe pick another one. This one here looks quite good as well, so I'm going to pick this nice split. So this front page is starting to look quite good, and we'll go through and we'll do the same thing for every page. We'll find a new layout that's more appropriate and more impactful. We can see here, this layout has aligned all of the images and recropped them to make them work, and now all the text is aligned. And this looks far better to what I had previously. And again, this is just taking a couple of seconds and a couple of clicks. It's very, very simple to do. The AI is doing the heavy lifting, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So now this presentation in just a few seconds is looking far better, but I've noticed that the text isn't really aligned with the way our company talks. So I want to change this or add the brand tone of voice to this text. So simply just clicked on the box here, go up to Magic Write, our text gen tool, and we can see a bunch of different options have appeared. So we have the ability to continue writing, to rewrite it, to make it more fun or more formal, even fix the spelling. But today I'm really going to focus on changing the voice. So with a click, I can apply brand voice, and the AI will rewrite this tool to make it more aligned with our brand voice. And I like this. It's a lot more punchy. It's more aligned with how our company or the co-company would like to be perceived. And I can do this with absolutely every text box, or just highlight multiple or select multiple ones to get it done. Again, very, very simple. Everything now is looking a lot better. I'm happy with the front page. The layouts are looking good. Everything's quite punchy. And let's just say I'm ready to share. So all I have to do to convert this into a new doc type is click Resize and Magic Switch. And we have a whole bunch of new options pop up for output. Now, if this was a social media post, I could choose to resize it to different mediums for different platforms. We can also change the size for different, to get it printing to the right aspect ratio, etc. but today I'm just going to focus on transforming it into a doc. So I just want to do an outline of the presentation to make it easier for everyone. So I click outline and then transform into doc. Now this is one of the tools that I find myself talking about as a marketer quite a lot, because I've worked in digital marketing for a long time, and when I've had to scale assets, I've had to get graphic designers to resize things for different formats, and it's been a long, laborious process where we've had to go back and forth. Magic Switch fixes that, and in seconds we can see that a doc has already been created. And so we've got a little bit of a logo or header there, we've got some images and some key takeaways as well. So this is a massive time saver and a very real workflow that we use internally. It's something that has saved me a ton of time, and it has improved my writing, and I hope it does for you as well.
Very slick and very powerful. I love that. I can see some excitement in the chat going. Just a reminder, if you do have questions for Greg after that, or some insight into the tools, make sure they go in the Q&A box, not the chat. Otherwise, keep some good conversation and comments going in chat by all means. Luke, I'm going to ask you for the same. Like, can you show us some of the tips and tricks in the tools that you were alluding to earlier? And I think you're going to go for the live demo, right?
All right, cool. Thanks, my friends. I'm going to show you HubSpot's new content remix tool, and this is an AI-powered content repurposing tool. We built this to help save marketers loads of time to be able to take a core piece of content and repurpose it into many different formats and channels. Now, I'm going to start with just a blank canvas so you can kind of see the whole creation process, but we also do have, a number of pre-built templates that come right out of the box. You also have the ability to save remixes if you ever want to reuse them, which is real common if you run regular webinars or regular events. So when I get into my canvas, all of Remix starts with a core piece of content, and there's a number of different types of content you could start with. You could start with remixing from one of the blog posts you've written. It could be a site page. For example, if you have a pillar page on your website, it could be a landing page, maybe for an offer. You also have the ability to start from a new text. And so this is a great option if you run a podcast and you export the transcription and you want to create a bunch of assets to promote your podcast. You can copy and paste that in here. We're working on the ability to upload a new document file. So imagine that you've created a campaign brief PDF, or as Greg was just showing, you've exported your beautiful Canva presentation and you want to upload it to create a bunch of supporting assets to promote out your webinar. You'll be able to do that in the near future along with video as well. Or you could start with a URL. So imagine you're running an event and you have an event website and you create a bunch of assets in a campaign to promote that event. But for the sake of this presentation, let's imagine that we're running a campaign, and I'm going to run a campaign on our data analytics trends of 2023. So you can see here, I select that into our canvas. It immediately loads the landing page itself, and it gives me the option to say, what do I want to repurpose this piece of content into? And I have a whole slew of different options. And so for us, our campaign typically consists of an ad. Let's say we want to run 2 different formats on 2 different channels. It may consist of a blog post. It may consist of an email, so I can shoot out a targeted email to my subscribers. And then I want to create 2 social posts. From there, we're going to give you the ability to add additional prompt logic or objectives or information to help make sure that the output of our AI is as accurate as possible. The great thing is what we see from customers is they can spend some time really fine-tuning and building out these great prompts for the AI and then save them in their templates so that when they run their next campaign, they basically have these like pre-optimized prompts to reuse in seconds. So I won't go through all these in detail, but you see on the left-hand side, you can fill out some information. You can determine if you want an ad image for your ad. You can add in how long do I want some of my blog posts to be, and so on and so forth. For the sake of the demo, just assume I filled that in. I'm hitting generate, and you can see in a matter of seconds, we've taken that core piece of content and repurposed that into a number of ads, into a number of social posts, into a blog and an email. Now, blog and email always takes just a second to populate, so because they're a little bit longer pieces of content. So I'm going to jump into one that I already created before this. You can see I now have all of my content here. Now, the great thing is I can jump in here, I can review the content to kind of see what this initial draft that was created and how do I like it. If I want to go back and give more guidance and regenerate it, I can always do that here. But once I'm ready and I feel pretty good about this draft and I'm ready to take it and polish it and publish it, I can either copy this to my clipboard and take that to wherever I'm doing my blogging, whether that's WordPress. If it's an email, you could copy it and take it to wherever you send your emails from or wherever you manage your social. But if you're a HubSpot customer, we save you even more time. So for Joe on the line who's doing his blogs in HubSpot, you basically can click View in Editor, and we will auto-magically spin up a brand new blog in your tool with all of the content you just created. This gives you a 0 to 1 start on your blog in a matter of seconds. Now, speaking of repurposing, I think, Joe, you mentioned that you use this. I'm picking on you today, Joe. Appreciate you calling out using HubSpot. If you want to repurpose your blog into a narrative or into a narrated version of your blog, it'll pull in the transcript. You can pick your AI voice, and in a matter of seconds, it'll generate a hyper-realistic narration of that blog. Now, the other cool thing is, we know with blogs, it's important to have visuals. That's the whole thing that we've been talking about here. And the beauty is right out of the box, you have this beautiful ability to tap into all of your Canva assets. So I can click Design with Canva. If I already have, something built in Canva, I can sort of pick that template and it'll pop open Canva. I can pick my assets and it'll automatically drop those assets right into your blog. Now, I want to give you 2 more quick examples of how you can use this content remix. In this case, it's for a content marketing strategy called the Hub and Spoke strategy, one of my favorites, where you build a really robust pillar page on your website that you're really trying to get ranked for a particular search term. And in this case, from that pillar page, you then want to create a bunch of supporting blogs to create this internal linking structure to pass on all that great link juice to that pillar page and get it ranked. So I selected my pillar page. I then created all of the blog posts from that initial pillar page of content. And then from there, you can see that this repurposing branching logic continues. For each one of my blog posts, I created an audio file of that blog, which I'm going to upload into my podcast distribution tool to send out to Spotify, to Apple iTunes. It created an image, a social post, everything that I need to basically hit the ground running with a bunch of drafts to promote this out. The last example that I want to show you is, imagine you're running an event. And so in this case here at HubSpot, we run a little event here at HubSpot or in Boston every year, coming up in September called Inbound. Shout out in the chat pane if you've ever attended Inbound. But I added the Inbound link in here, and imagine I wanted to promote this event. So from here, what I can do is once I add the URL, I can add in the ads, the blog post that I want. Again, I can branch off the blog post to promote social, all of this. And the great thing is once I've saved this as a template, I can always go back to my dashboard. And if you're like many marketers, you probably run regular events. We're on a webinar right now. We're probably going to do another webinar next month, and you're probably going to need all those same assets. So anytime that I want to reuse these, I can hop into in here. I can pick a different URL. So now imagine I'm running another event at we'll just say HubSpot.com is where the event website is. I hit save, and it will regenerate all those assets using all the prompts you've already saved. And in a matter of a second, you got all your new assets to work from right out of the gate. The last thing that I want to mention is you're probably wondering, okay, we creating a bunch of assets. How do I make sure it sounds like my brand? Well, just like Greg explained with Canva, in HubSpot, we have the ability for you in your settings to set up your brand voice, where you can set up parameters and guides around how you want that content to feel, the tone, the personality, and all of that brand guidance is automatically baked into all of these assets that are created. So you've already hit the ground running. You don't have to go back and spend loads of time trying to get this new content on brand.
That is awesome. There's so much love going on for some of these tools. And Luke, it was like you're reading my mind. I was thinking, how about events? Given my team runs so many events, you covered events. And I was like, how about brand tone consistency? Where is brand tone? So amazing. Thank you for walking us through that. There's so much excitement in the chat around this. So thank you to our participants for joining in the conversation. You've also got a bit of inbound love there, Luke. Again, check that out. It is a great event in Boston. I highly recommend it. I was going to do a quick summary of the discussion today, but we have very little time left. So I think we're going to move straight into our audience questions. So and I think we've had some really good ones come through as well. So if I can find my Q&A box. Amazing. So one question we have is, can the team share any tips on how to ensure that sales teams are using the branding and language that marketing used in the content or copy with their prospects? I find that marketing and sales work in silos, so trying to build a more harmonious approach. I have some thoughts on this, but also opening up the floor to any of our speakers today.
I mean, just piggybacking on what I was just showing, at least if you're a HubSpot user, that brand voice also gets applied to all of your sales emails as well. And the tools show up right in Outlook or Gmail for your sales team to leverage right where they do their work. And you can also leverage it in all of if you're doing like sales sequences or pre-built templates. And so that's one way that we at HubSpot make sure that all of our sales reps are speaking in the right tone to match our brand.
100%. I think that's one of the key elements, and hopefully what people got from these tools today, or the insight, is that this is actually going to really help bridge the gap when it comes to brand and content assets between marketing and sales. That time-saving ability to create templates that the team can use, I definitely see as a game changer for mine. We get a lot of ad hoc requests, which we love from our sales team, but I think we definitely don't want to be the bottlenecks when it comes to creating content for them. So definitely some of those features making sense there. What else do we have? I think there was a question. I really liked a question around, what's the right balance between polished and casual content? I think this goes back to the question or the point we made around, how with social media, we're seeing better results when it's not polished and heavily produced, and it's a lot more informal and casual. So Shirley, how do you think about this within social? And I can add in my thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think overall we see it in the research in the category that people are preferring that raw on the cutting room floor type of content. It just feels much more relatable, approachable. It's a very lean in experience. And I think that's to your point earlier, Kat, around why creators and influencers are so successful, because they're not film producers, they're not movie makers, and they're able to film and get that engaged kind of audience. But that being said, I saw the same question, and I think there is still a place for polished content. I don't think it's fully, it has to be raw and dirty and shot on your iPhone kind of situation. I think if you're creating a multi-channel marketing campaign that is out of home, from TV to billboard to everything else, print, collateral, having that creative consistency can also be really powerful. And I think what happens is often when you do lo-fi content, you don't get that same creative treatment. So it can feel quite disjointed as a campaign. So I've popped in my answer, but the thing I'll highlight that is a benefit of having polished content is building the salience and building the ability to remember things, because as we're exposed to tens and thousands of pieces of content, seeing the same thing at a frequency level multiple times can actually be of benefit to people.
Yeah, awesome tip. I think it's also channel appropriate, right? I think people expect and crave that more casual experience when they're on social media, potentially when they are getting a sales demo or follow-up resources from sales. Maybe they do expect to see something of a bit higher quality. I think it's something you want to, play around with, knowing your audience and what they like, and also channel dependent. And just to throw in an extra layer there, dependent on where they are in their buyer's journey as well. I definitely think that more kind of entertaining content helps further up the attract stage than it might do, when we're really trying to get into product benefits and features further down that sales conversation. We had a really good one here. It says anonymous, but shout out to this question. How do you transition smoothly from being a B2B company into a B2C using visual communications for your social media platforms? I think my tip here would be just to start by asking your sales team, honestly, where they maybe find the most challenges in that sales conversation. What sort of parts of the product or value prop are they having trouble explaining to consumers and potential prospects in a way that's really landing. Like, start with those challenger areas and think about how visual comms might enable the sales team to better convey that message or that benefit or unique selling point that you have. So I think, lots of good questions about social teams here, which I love. But when you start with visual communications, tap into that product and feature benefit, ask the sales team for their advice and start from there, is something I would say on that one. All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to try and fit in one more. What do you think? Oh, it just jumped. Where did it go? What do you think is the lowest hanging fruit for time-poor marketers when it comes to visual content? Where should I start to have the biggest impact? Luke and Greg, you touched on some really great tools there. I might throw that one your way. These are good questions.
I think it comes down to the channel. Really, it does. I mean, if you're focusing on growth through social, then that's where you focus on building out a really robust strategy for that, and then directing people to landing pages and whatnot. So it really does depend on what you're trying to achieve and your main channels. But yeah, my big thing is, as a marketer, I want to make sure that the imagery and the way we present ourselves reflects the brand, and making sure that that shows up in every channel in the right way for the right audience. Does that make sense?
It does. I would add to that and just say, making sure that you can measure with whatever you're starting with in that regard, right? When we're talking about impact, I definitely still hear many marketers struggling to measure impact. So making sure that you have the tools that can tell your business, your company, what impact this content and campaign is having on the business. So make sure you're able to track that back to your sales team, or if you're in customer marketing, whether it's retention. I think that's going to help you actually expand the resources that you have and the ability to have more impact. So yeah, my big tip would be measurement and tracking.
Yeah, just a little bit further on that.
Yeah.
Also testing, absolutely just test everything you do, because there's no bigger waste of time than honing down one path with one idea that you've had and it just doesn't land. So just spend as much time as you can testing.
Absolutely. All right, that flew by for me. We are at time. So firstly, I want to thank our amazing panelist guests today for sharing their expertise, their thoughts, for showing us some very cool tools and tricks with our audience today. So thank all of you so much. To everyone else, the participants today, you've been awesome. I can't quite multitask with the chat as well, but I have seen some really great conversations going. So I love that everybody's sharing tips with each other and what is working for them. So thank you so much to everyone today. Really enjoyed this session, and good luck on your journey with your content and your visual communications. Thanks for tuning in.